Hello everyone, I'm Laura Barat and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing videos about past life astrology, and this is something really exciting. I've wanted to do this for a while. It's not that hard to learn, and I'm going to do a series of videos. I'm going to break this up into a series of videos, each about 10 to 15 minutes long, and I'm going to start with the most general aspects of past life astrology and get more and more specific with each video, okay? And in the back of me here, I've made a list of everything that you need to look for in when you are looking at past life astrology in a person's horoscope. And I'll keep this up during every video so you can see it. And yeah, so it's really fun, and let's get started, okay? Okay, so these are the things that you look for in a chart to ascertain past lives, generally in this order, okay? You're gonna look for Ketu. Ketu is our past lives, okay, or the south node of the moon. Ketu's placement and its ruler. So it's sign and house placement in the Rashi or the birth chart. The birth chart and the Rashi are the same thing. I'm just gonna say birth chart from now on. So Ketu's placement in the birth chart, the house cusp that Ketu is closest to in the birth chart. Personally, I use the Campanus house system. So, and I use that system because a lot of the other systems tend to fall apart when you get into the higher longitudes, or, you know, closer to the poles. So that's why I use Campanus. So that's what I'm using. So when you have Ketu, you look at Ketu in the birth chart, and if it's in a sign but there's no house cusp in the sign, then you look at the closest house cusp it conjoins, okay? Whichever sign, if that's the sign behind it or in front of it. So you look at Ketu's sign placement, its house placement or the house cusp it's closest to, and then obviously the ruler of the sign that Ketu falls in. And I'm going to talk about that today in this video, okay? This is the general, you're going to get kind of a general idea of who the person was or who you were and what kind of life you're coming from and the general theme of your life, all right? Then you're going to look at Ketu conjoined any planets, and this means in the same sign. In the Vedic system, it's in the same sign, that's conjoined, okay? If you have Ketu at 29 degrees of, say, Aries, and you've got Jupiter at 1 degree of Taurus, that is not conjoined, okay? And this is in the birth chart. Then, now this is where you start getting a lot more specific, and you start getting into things like, you know, the profession, the manner of death. A lot of people really kind of want to know that. There's a lot of phobias and traumas around that type of thing. If there was any, you know, traumas that happened to the person, if there's PTSD carried over from past lives, and that type of thing, okay? And another thing a lot of people really want to know about is when they meet someone and they get into a relationship. This is one of the biggest things, and they want to say, and they ask me, you know, is there a past life connection? And usually there always is a past life connection to some degree. Sometimes there's a huge past life connection that has a lot of karma to work out, and a lot of, you could say, negative trauma to go through, or there's not, you know, and it goes by degrees. That type of thing goes by degrees. So we're going to talk about that as well, how you can see really strong past life connections to other people and who they were in your life and all that type of thing. Okay, we're going to do that as well at the end. But, okay, so the third one is Ketu, or the south node of the moon, in the D60 chart. Now, the D60 chart is the most time-sensitive divisional chart there is. And it basically changes every minute. And some of in some cases, or well, if you use house cusps, it changes every few seconds. So it really makes a difference to the individual. And in fact, I personally use the D60 as much as I use the birth chart, because the D60 is all effects. Parasara says it's all effects, and it's basically another birth chart, but it's very individualized to that individual person. And because it's so time sensitive. Okay, so you're going to look at Ketu and the D60, and I will put down in the description how to calculate the D60, and so you can calculate it if you don't have the software to do that. My software, Kala software, does that. Okay, so Ketu and the D60. Then you're going to look for the ruler of Ketu and the D60. So let's say Ketu's in Libra. You're going to look for Venus. You're going to look for the ruler of Ketu and the D60 in the D12. The D12 is the chart of past lives. There is an actual chart of the past life. Parasara says it's parents, and he really doesn't get very more specific than that, but it's actually more than that. It's the varga, or the divisional chart of the parents and the parents' karma, but with you. But it's also the ancestral line. And the Rahu and Ketu, or the nodal axis in the D12, in the chart of past lives, or your parents and ancestors, is represents your maternal and paternal ancestors. Rahu represents your maternal, your mother's mother and all her relatives, your grandmother, your maternal grandmother and all her relatives, or her ancestors. And it represents your paternal grandfather and all of his ancestors. Ketu represents your maternal grandfather and his ancestors, and your paternal grandmother and her ancestors. Okay, and I'm going to get more into that when I do the specific video on that, because that's really interesting as well. Okay, and so the D12, I'm not going to show you how, well, I'm actually not going to show how to calculate the D60 or the D12 in this video, because I'm not using them in this video. But when I do use them, I will show you how to calculate those if you don't have the software. Okay, so now, oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so you look at the Ketu and the D60, then you take the ruler of Ketu and look at that in the D12. That's going to tell you a lot about who the person is and their specific karmas and their last life. It's going to add a lot of nuance to the basic Ketu positions in the birth chart. Okay, now in the D12, now you look specifically at the D12. It's called the dwadasamsa. In the D12, you look at the Atmakaraka. I have it here as AK for short, the Atmakaraka. So let's say your Atmakaraka is Mars. You're going to look for Mars's placement in this D12 chart, okay? In this divisional chart. That's another step. And I'm going to make a video for each of these things. So I'm going to explain them very thoroughly, okay? So you're going to look at the Atmakaraka in the D12, and then you're going to look at Ketu's ruler in the Rashi, or in the birth chart, in the D12 as well, in addition to the ruler of Ketu in the D60. So, so a lot of Ketu, a lot of South Node stuff going on here, okay? And in addition to those things, you're going to look at the 12th house cusp in the birth chart, the sign it's in, and any strong aspects to it. And when I mean strong aspects, I mean anything more than 40 points. And that's calculated in most astrology softwares. And then you're going to look at the 12th house ruler. So let's say your 12th house is Aquarius, and Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. You're going to look at Saturn in the, you're going to look at Saturn in the D12. And then you're going to look at the 12th ruler in the the 12th house in the D60 and its ruler in the D12. So there's kind of a lot of things here going on. It's kind of a lot to digest, I know, but I'm going to do a video about each of these things. So you're really going to understand them a lot better. I just wanted to go through this for people who are already pretty advanced in astrology so they can start looking at all of these things in their chart, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about Ketu. And I'm just going to run through it kind of generally speaking. I'm going to do more in-depth videos about Ketu later on for different reasons, just about the nodal axis anyway. But right now, for these purposes, I'm going to give out some keywords for Ketu, or the south node, in certain houses, or meaning conjoin certain house cusps, and the ruler of the sign that they're in. And planets conjoin them. It's going to be kind of a general explanation that I'll run through. And then I'm going to go into more detail as we progress farther into these videos. I just really wanted to get this list out there. And don't worry, I'm going to keep this list up for every video, okay? All right, so Ketu represents the past life. And there's a myth about Ketu, and basically the Vedic myth that's used in Vedic astrology is about the flood. And there's usually a flood myth in or a flood creation myth. We come out of the flood and everything is reborn again. And what the flood represents is, or the water covering the earth, is consciousness. And so, so Ketu is, in the Vedic myth, I'm just going to be real general here. I'm not going to tell the whole thing right now, but the myth of Ketu was he was a fish, and he guided the rishis. There were some rishis that he told them to build a boat, just very much like Noah's Ark, you know, in the Bible. But he told them to build a boat, and they did. And then, of course, the flood came, and then he pulled the boat along the flood waters until they subsided and land appeared, and they restarted again. So what Ketu represents is kind of what we carry through our consciousness from life to life, okay? Whatever planet is conjoined with Ketu, that's a planet we really are very talented in and know very well. And this is just, you know, basic astrology. Most astrologers know this, but, we're very familiar with it and talented in it, but it's not perfect yet. And it can only be perfected by going with Rahu. Now, this is just kind of psychological astrology, mixed in with the myths and also some phenomenal astrology. But I wanted to tell you why Ketu is associated with past lives. That's the reason, because of this myth. And so wherever Ketu is, it actually shows our past life karmas, and that's why it's so prevalent here, okay? Now, so Ketu through the signs and houses. Let's say you have two house cusps in a sign, and you have Ketu there. Let's say you have Ketu in Cancer, and you've got the 5th and 6th house cusp in Cancer. You're going to look for the house cusp closest to Ketu, okay, in degrees. And if it's in a sign that doesn't have any house cusps, then you will look at the closest house cusp in the sign, either behind it or in front of it, okay? Now, so there's 4 types of houses in this is the Vedic system. And those houses are Dharma houses, Artha houses, Kama houses, and Moksha houses. Dharma houses are life purpose houses, or self-expression houses, or houses of the self, okay? Artha houses are 2, 6, and 10. And, Dharma houses are 1, 5, and 9. Artha houses, Artha means wealth, okay, or material possessions, material life. That's what it means, Artha. And those houses are 2, 6, and 10. Then you have Kama, which is desire houses, and those are 3, 7, and 11. And then you have Moksha, or enlightenment, or consciousness houses, emotional houses. Those are, and those are water. They correspond to water. And those are 4, 8, and 12. So the Dharma houses correspond to fire houses. They're the fire houses, 1, 5, and 9. And if you want to go a little farther, they correspond to the fire signs. The first sign is Aries, the 5th sign is Leo, the 9th sign is Sagittarius, all fire signs. So they correspond, they're called fire houses. Those are Dharma, or life purpose houses, the houses of the self. Now, when Ketu is in Dharma houses, or conjoined Dharma house cusps, 1, 5, or 9, the person is very much about themselves. Themselves is the first house, who they are, their own self-sufficiency, relying on themselves, only kind of listening to their own thoughts and their own opinions and very much in their own world. That's what a Ketu conjoined the first house is, okay? Ketu conjoined the 5th house, that's self-expression, our creative intelligence, coming only from us as an individual, corresponding to Leo, okay? And so when Ketu is there, it's very much about the person's own creativity and how they are very attached to their self-expression, and they lived by their creativity in their past lives. That kind of was the theme of their past life. If Ketu is conjoined the 5th, and they had very unique creations. They were a risk taker, and they were someone who did something big, okay? And that kind of lasted beyond after they passed on. Also, the 5th house has to do with children. They were very involved with their children if they were so inclined. Now, I want to explain the Ketu conjoined the first house cusp a little more. So that person, it's all about them. You know, they're very self-assertive people. They have a very strong personality, and they worked on their own. You know, they were very much about their own thoughts and opinions about things, okay? So now Ketu conjoined the 9th house cusp is, these people were interested in higher knowledge, higher learning, like university professors, PhDs, whatever that was in the past. That's something that was a theme of their life. That a teacher, the 9th house is also myths and legends and storytelling. That's how we psychologically learn. That's how we kind of incorporate all the archetypes into our life through myth and legend. Those people were very connected to that. They could also have been a very religious person. The 9th house is religion and or religious law, God's law. And they could have been had a lot of faith in God. Now, if the way this works is if the Ketu has joined the 9th house cusp, and let's say it's with Mercury, then the person's going to be leaning more towards learning, being a learned scholar rather than a religious person. If Ketu has joined Jupiter and the 9th house cusp, you can bet that that person was probably a priest or some kind of religious higher up type of person. Jupiter is religion and Dharma. Now, if you have Ketu conjoin the 9th house cusp in a sign of Jupiter, like Sagittarius or Pisces, that's also considered being someone who's very religious and spiritual. Okay. Now, and see, that's how that works. If you have, let's say you have Ketu in Aries conjoined the first house cusp, and it's conjoined Mars, then you can bet that person could have been a military commander, very assertive person, knows what they want, their word is final law, you know, everything rests with them. If Ketu was in the first and it's conjoined the sun, then, or it's in Leo, let's say Ketu's in Leo and it's in the first house, then that person was probably a leader of some sort in some sort of field. They could have been a very high up leader, you know, a leader in the government, a king even, queen, whatever. Somebody who has a lot of power and authority. And that also goes for the 10th house cusp as well, but I'll get to that in a minute. So you can kind of, you know, see how the general themes of a life come into play concerning Ketu and it's conjoining certain house cusps and being in certain signs or being conjoined certain planets. Now, if you have Ketu in Kama or desire houses, no, let me go to Artha. Artha houses. Those are houses 2, 6, and 10, corresponding to earth signs, the earth signs of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And these houses have to do with wealth and materiality. And so the second house, if you have Ketu conjoined the second house, that's someone who was very good at managing their resources and taking care of their family, taking care of their responsibilities. That's what the second house is. Also taking care of their wealth. They were very good at managing money. They could be very wealthy. If Ketu is conjoined Jupiter in the second house or conjoined the second house cusp, you can bet that person was probably extremely wealthy in their past life, okay? Or if it's in a sign of Jupiter, if it's conjoined the second house cusp in Pisces or Sagittarius, it works that way as well. Someone who was, where's the Artha houses? They could have had a family business, you know, very good at earning wealth, self-sufficient, you know, just someone who really could manage things very well. And whatever they had at their disposal to work with to create wealth, they could do that very well. And when they come into this life, they're usually very self-sufficient people and can make money easily. They have a knack for it, okay? Or if they don't make money, they can take care of themselves with what they have very well, okay? Now the the sixth house. If Ketu is conjoined the sixth house cusp, and it is, if it's conjoined the sixth house cusp, the sixth house corresponds to Virgo, the sign of Virgo, and it's also a Artha or wealth house. So this house has to do with overcoming problems and overcoming obstacles and dealing with all the problems right here and now. These people are very good at doing that. They bring that over from their past life. Virgo is the sign of the harvest. You know, the sixth house is can make a person a laborer or a farmer or somebody who worked really hard. Usually these people work very hard. They are have a very strong work ethic. Sorry, and they're just you know, very efficient with their time, and you know, they are fastidious a little bit. They're kind of fastidious about their environment, and they want things a certain way. And then it takes a lot for them to relax, you know, because they always feel like they need to be working, or they have it in their psyche to move around a lot and do a lot of things and do them in the world, okay? Because it's an Artha or wealth house. It's materiality. It's an earth sign house. So, and And usually they were working under someone else, but they were very efficient at it, very good at it, and you know, a very hard worker. So that's what, and they're also very good at, they probably had a lot of problems in their life that they had to overcome. They had some enemies that they had to deal with because the sixth house rules our enemies and our competitors, and they probably did a lot of competition. It's also people who are very good athletes, believe it or not, because athletes need to work very hard. They have to go through the drudgery of doing the same thing over and over and over again, you know, to become very good at that, whatever they're doing. So that is Ketu in the sixth house, and that's like kind of what the theme of their past life is, okay? All right, so 10th house. Now, the 10th house is the sign of power and influence. And it's where the sun gets its digbala, or its directional strength. The sun is directly overhead. That's where the sun and Mars, both of those planets get, so they can see everything. So you want a general, who is Mars, and the king, which is the sun, to see everything. They need to see the kingdom, to see, you know, the king needs to see it because that's his kingdom, and the general needs to see it, which is Mars, because he needs to see the armies, the enemy armies and the armies going out, right? His own army. So in the 10th house, when Ketu is in the 10th house, the person was a leader or had a lot of responsibility and had to lord it over other people. Whereas I was talking about Ketu in the 6th, was someone who had a lot of work to do, but usually they worked under someone else. Ketu in the 10th, or conjoined the 10th house cusp, is somebody who was a powerful leader in some form, in some way, okay? Whether that was a military leader or a politician or a king, or, you know, like, let's say what do they call it? The mother in a monastery, you know, let's say you have, you know, Ketu conjoined Jupiter in the 10th, and that's like the person had religious authority, okay? So that's kind of how that works, you know, how you can mix and match those things. Or if it's in a sign of Jupiter, or let's say it's in the 10th house in a sign of Mercury, then that person probably had authority over learning in some fashion, or of law. Mercury is being a lawyer. That's one profession. Or in business, Mercury rules business. So the person could have been the top dog in whatever business he was doing. So, so you can see kind of how that works, right? Or conjoin Mercury or in a sign of Mercury. If Ketu's in the 10th house in Leo, you can bet that person was probably a real leader, as in a politician, a government leader, you know, a king, that kind of thing, okay? Okay, so moving on to comma houses. Okay, comma houses are desire houses, and they correspond to the air signs. And that's 3, 7, and 11. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. That's the 3rd, 7th, and 11th sign, okay? And so air signs are desire, but they're also, you know, communication, ideas, exchange of ideas. That's where our desires originate. So in the 3rd house, if Ketu is conjoined the 3rd house cusp, the person was very skilled. They had a lot of skills. They could have worked with their hands. Actually, Mercury, according to Gemini, Mercury is a craftsman. And creates art. Now, I know, you know, a lot of people say, well, isn't Venus art? Yeah, Venus's art is the finished product of art. Venus is the sculpture or the painting, but the actual doing or painting or sculpting, the actual doing it, working with your hands, that is, that's Mercury, according to Gemini. And then Also, Mercury rules performing arts. Like a ballet or dancing or any kind of singing or presenting. Those things take skill. And so Mercury rules that, the practice. Mercury is the apprentice, okay? And so you keep practicing and practicing until you get something right if you're a dancer and, or, whatever it is. But the actual finished product, like when you go to a play or a show, that's Venus. Venus is entertainment. Venus rules entertainment. So that's a little subtle difference there. But the third house is also entertainment and performing arts and arts. So if Ketu is conjoined the third house cusp, the person could have been, a performing artist. It really kind of depends on, what sign that Ketu is in. And I'm going to do the signs in the next video and go more into depth, because I'm just kind of throwing out the signs and the planets that they're conjoined because, it makes it a little more interesting. But the next video I'm going to do Ketu through the signs and how that colors those things, okay? I just really wanted to get to the houses because it's more concrete. Okay, so anyway, back to Ketu conjoined the third. Also someone who's very well at communicating, had strong communication skills, someone who had a lot of friends and associates, who was a social person, it could have been someone who relayed information because Mercury is the messenger, or, like someone who knew a lot of languages, that kind of thing. So Ketu in the third, conjoined the third house cusp, will give that type of theme to their past life. Now, in the seventh house is the house of the partner, and it's also the house of the public, and it's also the house of business. So the person could have been, their marriage was probably their most important theme of their life, their marriage and their partnership. If Ketu was in a sign of Venus, conjoined the seventh house cusp. If Ketu was in a sign of Gemini or Virgo or in Mercury signs, then the person was very good at business, and their business partner was their main focus of life, okay? And let's see, and the public is the moon. So let's say the seventh house cusp is in Cancer, conjoined Ketu, then the person worked with the public in some fashion and had to be in the public eye. So like, let's say if you have, and another thing, Mercury rules, I said it, he rules performing arts, but he also rules, well, that's actors, acting, plays, and that type of thing. Or even dancers, if you're dancing in front of a public. So let's say you have Ketu and Cancer conjoined Mercury. The person was probably a performer in their past life because or a public speaker or something like that. The court jester because he had to perform in public, which is the moon, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. And then you had Mercury there, and then the seventh house there is also the public. So that's a double public with a Mercury type of profession. So you kind of see how this works, how this all gels together, okay? Then the 11th house. The 11th house has to do with our social groups and our peers. It's about winning awards, and it's awards that we get after a long, drawn-out effort, an incredible effort to get something done. And the 11th house is the last desire house. So it's like our most burning desires that we want to accomplish over our lifetime, and then we finally get our reward. And that's the 11th house. And that's why it's like, your social circle, your peers, you finally get to the point where you're really looked up to by your peers, and you're very social, and you're an important person, and that is the 11th house. So if you have Ketu in or conjoin the 11th house cusp, then you were a person that was looked up to or very important to your social circle and peer group in some way. And like say it's in a sign of Saturn. Let's say you have Ketu in Aquarius and you've got the 11th house cusp there, then you were someone who was looked up to by your elders because Saturn is elders. And they went to you for advice. They really looked up to you. They admired you. And that was an important theme of your life, okay? So that's how that works. Or it's conjoined Saturn, okay? And then Ketu in Mosha. This is a really interesting one. So these are water houses. And the water houses are 4, which is Cancer, 8, which is Scorpio, and 12, which is Pisces. So if you have Ketu conjoin one of those house cusps, the 4th, the 8th, or the 12th, then a lot of your life was spent hidden, or those are hidden houses, or it's houses that free you from worldly concerns. That's why they call them moksha houses. Moksha means enlightenment or liberation, and that's when we're completely free of any kind of worldly concern. So now in the 4th house, now that can mean a lot of things. It can mean that you were an actual monk or a nun, or it could mean that you were incapacitated in some way and you had to have other people taking care of you, so you did not have any worldly concerns, like, or you were physically handicapped and you had people take care of you and you were always home all the time. That might be like a Ketu in the 4th house where you had your mother take care of you all the time. Or you were in jail, believe it or not, in prison. That's the 12th house. Because when you're in prison, you don't have any worries, right? I mean, you do have worries, but you don't have to worry about worldly things like making money and getting food and all that type of thing. Or you could have been, in an ashram or a monastery. Like say if you have Ketu in the 12th house conjoined Jupiter, you can bet you were probably some kind of monk or nun or some kind of ascetic type of person, because Jupiter is religion. Let's say you have Ketu in the 8th house. Now the 8th house is a very interesting house. It means it represents psychics. What begins and what ends, the wise know from the bhava of the cavity flaw. That's what Parasara says. That's the actual words, okay? The 8th house is the house of psychics and of astrologers and just people who are very, shamans who can see beyond, right? Who can see the past and future. And but it's also the house of the taboo things, very taboo things you want to keep hidden. It's like prostitution. It's the house of that. And let's say you have Ketu in a sign of Venus, conjoined Venus somewhere, that you were doing something that was sexually taboo. That was a big part of your life, which is prostitution. Or you could have been someone who was a psychic or some kind of a go-to person for like royalty or very powerful people. There's this movie, it's called Queen Margot. It's a French movie. And it's about this Catholic massacre. I forgot the name of it, St. Bartholomew or something. I don't remember exactly, but it was in France and they slaughtered all these Protestants in Paris. And the Medici, Catherine de Medici, she was the queen, and she went to this guy who was like her top advisor, and he was looking at a dead body to tell the future. That's like an 8th house type of person, a person that's behind the scenes, but does a lot of, who's a psychic basically, or somebody who can tell the future, and they are high up on the ladder. They're like advisors, but they're behind the scenes. They're very hidden. So, you know, you could have been that type of person. It really depends on the ruler of the sign that Ketu's in, or if Ketu is conjoined certain planets. If it's with Venus or in a sign of Venus, it can mean that the person was some kind of prostitute. They could have been a holy prostitute, you know, when they had those temple prostitutes in ancient history and ancient times. So you have to kind of look at everything like that. But that's an 8th house type of thing, okay? And then, okay, so I did the 12th house. And yeah, so that's Ketu through the houses that are kind of broken up by the types of houses that they are. And so next video, I'm going to talk about Ketu through the signs and incorporate some of the houses I was talking about a little bit. I wanted to do the houses first. And then, so you kind of get an idea, so you can look at your chart. And also Ketu can join planets. Okay, I'm going to talk about that next time. And as I go on with each subsequent video, I will get more into detail, especially when we talk about the D12, which is the varga, or the divisional chart of past lives. Okay, so thank you for watching, and please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.